Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and anybody else. Welcome once again to Nerd Week Live here on YouTube, brought to you by the folks. Let me turn my sound off on that. There we go. Brought to you by the folks at Nerd Caliber. I am Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. I am first-person shooter on Facebook, Burley_adopter on Twitter, and a bunch of other places. And I am solo tonight, as you can see. Unfortunately, you got to look at my giant mug, as opposed to my little tiny head up in the corner. People are off doing movie reviews. People are traveling for other work. People are sick from New York Comic Con. Yay, New York Comic Con for making people sick. Something it does really well, in addition to giving us piles and piles of content that will start going up on the website soon, or being put up here on our YouTube channel soon. So because it's just me, we'll be going through things pretty quickly. Without having other people to bounce ideas off, I'll just sort of present the news. And we're going to jump right into it. Are we going to jump right into it? Am I going to tease anything? I guess we'll be at LeakyCon, which is a Harry Potter con that is usually in Orlando and is going to be in Orlando as well, but it also opened a Boston branch. So we'll be at LeakyCon this coming weekend. We're going to be at Rhode Island Comic Con early November. We'll be at Super Mega Fest. We'll be at a bunch of places. So check us out. Come by if you're going to be at any of those cons. Get your photos, get your video, get up on the website or on YouTube. We were at New York. New York was amazing, as always. It's insane. It's even more insane this year than usual. I heard, I haven't verified these numbers, I heard that, again this year, they beat the numbers, attendance numbers for San Diego Comic-Con. And in the last, Johan, hello, Devil Wolfie, hello. In the last few years, those two have been trading positions off back and forth as to which one is the largest convention, largest nerd convention in the United States. And looks like, from what I've heard, New York is back on top. And these are within, like 1,000 or a couple of thousand attendees each time they trade off. So, but, good for New York. Red X Garcia, hello, how you doing? So, let's go start right off with the very first topic. And that is, we, out of New York Comic Con, of course, finally get an actual premiere date for the Harley Quinn animated series. That is November 29th on the DC Universe streaming platform. If you watched our show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the latest trailer that they dropped, and it contained an awful lot of really interesting, funny, bizarre, sort of smaller side character and villains that you don't often see, or you don't see enough of, certainly in the regular DC Universe. And like the Creeper, who is just the weirdest. So the where's our 1 million subs? Hey, Waifu Pennywise. We have about 372 and so let's say 373,000. We're getting there, Devil Wolfie. Don't you worry about it. Johan, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So Harley Quinn, the animated series, will be premiering November 29th. One of the very cool things about the trailer was that it showed that it's picking up a number of the story elements and storylines from the Harley Quinn solo comic book series. And it's making a few changes to it. That's cool. But I'm looking forward to it. There have been people who are not crazy about Kaley Cuoco doing the voice. Most of those people that are not crazy about it are Harley Quinn fans or cosplayers that I know who insist on Harley Quinn having that, New York accent. And obviously, Kaley Cuoco doesn't, but she's got comic timing, and I think that's way more important than having an accurate accent. And plus, Harley's been played with various levels of that accent coming in and out for years, so I don't have a problem with it. And I'm looking forward to the show. It looks funny. I love the animation. The humor is hilarious. Devil Wolfie, she has a New York accent. When she was created, the question is why New York voice? When she was created originally for Batman the Animated Series, the actress Tara Strong, who did her voice in the first instance there, did it with a New York accent. Kind of a riff on Fran Drescher from the Nanny series, sort of an evil version of Fran Drescher, and they just stuck. I mean, that was her voice. But again, it's like people who do the Joker. Some people do the laugh differently. Some people do the voice differently, and I'm fine with all of those interpretations. Yes, Devil Wolfie, I do have a dragon plushie in the back. Nobody's ever asked about that. My sister sewed that for me decades and decades ago. I think when I was in college, and I've had it with me ever since. And I really like my dragon plushie. Ghostly Audios, welcome to the show, and says she does usually have a New York or Jersey-ish accent when she's Harley and not Harleen. That is true, Ghostly, and honestly, her accent usually stays no matter who the voice actress is doing it, or live actress in the case of Margot Robbie. But even though that's not always the case with the Joker, I mean, the Joker doesn't always have the Mark Hamill, pitch modulating voice that goes up to the high and back down to the low. I'm fine with however the different voice actors do that, so I don't care that much about the accent. So Devil Wolfie, we're getting into No, It's Not Real, and you can see one of the wings, it's very small wings. One of the wings is draping over right below its neck. The other one is, of course, on the other side where you can't see it. Johan, go finish your homework. You go do that. That's the right thing to do. Anyway, November 29th, DC Universe. Check it out if you're into this. I am really excited about this news. A couple of years ago, and so we did it on one of our very first shows, we talked about the fact that Amblin Entertainment, Steven Spielberg's production operation, and Warner Brothers were going to bring back the Animaniacs. One of my favorite cartoons from the 90s. It was just announced hours ago today that the full original voice cast is coming back. And this is an official announcement. It was announced by Rob Paulson on his Twitter at Yakko Pinky, and with a picture of Tress MacNeille. I got her name wrong, I think. Tress MacNeille, I did. Jess Harnell, also in the picture, and also tagged as Maurice LaMarche. So the Warner Brothers and Dot are Rob Paulson as Yakko, Jess Harnell as Wacko, and Tress MacNeille as Dot. And Maurice LaMarche, as far as I know, his only regular role in the Animaniacs was as the brain to Rob Paulson's Pinky of Pinky and the Brain. He may have done all sorts of other voices in the Animaniacs version, or the Animaniacs segment of the entire Animaniacs show, but he wasn't one of the Warner Brothers or Dot. That implies that they're going to be bringing back, as the part of the whole show, Pinky and the Brain, which is one of my absolute favorite bits ever. So, if you haven't checked out just how cool both of those two guys are, Maurice LaMarche and Rob Paulson, and I've had the pleasure of talking to Rob Paulson a bunch of times and actually interviewing him for Nerd Caliber. If it's still up there, and I can't imagine with this coming up that they would have allowed him to keep it up there, but the Nostalgia Critic did a recording at Connecticut, right down the road in Hartford, Connecticut, 5 years ago, where he had Maurice LaMarche as the brain reacting to Pinky's and Rob Paulson as Pinky's just complete stupidity, and it is the most curse-laden diatribe against the moron attitude of Pinky that you could have possibly, the things that you really wish the brain had said to him over all the years. And so it's on the Nostalgia Critics, or it should be if they haven't been forced to take it down, on the Nostalgia Critics YouTube channel. So go find that and check it out. It's hilarious. Narf! Thank you, Ghostly Audios, for the Narf. I also, Ghostly Audio says, I love Animaniacs so much, and I'm very excited for this. Me too. The fact that they announced that complete voice cast coming back for this thing, I was absolutely pumped. Not just because I love it, but also for Paulson and LaMarche and all these other people who are really good. So 2020 sometime, I think spring 2020 is what I've read. So it's not anything that's going to be happening anytime like real super soon. So, don't get that excited for it coming up, but it's definitely on my watch list for the next year and a half. The next article, bit of news. So this is up here. I don't often put up just like one-off announcements of one-off comic books unless it's something really super spectacular. But this is the announcement, also coming out of New York Comic Con, of 6 different one-shot comic books that will be coming out in January called The End. And what they are supposed to be, they're essentially alternate worlds. They're what-ifs, but they're not called what-if. It looks at the end of life of these 6 different characters. And so they take place anywhere from a couple of decades in the near future to literally trillions of years into the future. Devil Wolfie, I kind of just sub, so if I say Narf, it's good. You can say Narf all you want, Devil Wolfie. I will never, ever stop anybody from Narfing. Ghostly Audios, they mentioned it on the Fine Brothers reaction channel when the kids reacted to it and when the actors reacted to the kids reacting to them. Ghostly, I assume you mean the Pinky and the Brain swearing at Pinky. But let me know if that's what you meant, and that sounds like a lot of fun. Anyway, the reason these pictures are up here, other than just announcing the fact that in January you get to buy these things and the artwork looks great and it looks like they'd be interesting stories, is the fact that I actually am kind of surprised that these didn't leak out and we didn't see people cosplaying these versions at New York Comic Con. I guarantee, particularly with the aging audience, that we will start seeing people cosplaying these. I mean, the Silver Fox Doctor Strange, the Silver Fox Miles Morales version there. But that Captain Marvel outfit is just fantastic. I guarantee we'll start seeing these things in Comic-Cons probably within months, maybe even weeks. So that's basically why this is up there and why I thought this is interesting news, is that you're going to start seeing this wave of interesting alternate versions of some of these characters, and if you go, gee, what's that from? It's like, well, it's from this new one-shot that's coming out in January. And again, the stories sound really cool. If you are into these, and a lot of these are Marvel characters I really like to read. Doctor Strange was the very first comic I ever read. Then I will be picking them up because they look really neat. But aside from that, yeah, they were up there because that's cosplay inspiration for people. I guarantee we're going to see some of that. Ghostly Autos, it was Animaniacs in general, and then the actors made it official that they would reboot the show with exactly, yes. So, moving on to our next kinda, sorta, not really news. Ghostly Audios, that the art and stories are amazing. The art certainly is gorgeous, and the stories sound amazing. The execution, and granted, they've got some really fantastic writers. We're back on, we're back on The End, so let's go back to that. But it will depend on the execution of the writing. They may be fantastic stories. The plots of the stories sound very interesting. Let's put it that way. And we'll see how they're executed when we finally get to them. But let's jump right back to that thing that you just saw a few seconds there, is PlayStation. The worst kept secret? I guess it wasn't really a secret. Everybody knew that the next generation PlayStation was in development because Sony talked about it at E3. But They just announced that, surprise, surprise, it is in fact going to be called the PlayStation 5. All right, we knew that. Or we could have guessed that. I mean, they haven't so far anyway played around with the, no pun intended, the naming scheme of their consoles like Microsoft has. You know, from Xbox to Xbox One, and everybody called the Xbone and all this stuff. So it's a PlayStation 5. It's coming out holiday 2020, so a little more than a year. You'll be able to buy this thing. And the technical specs that they've been able to give out so far are pretty impressive. It will be based on a custom designed AMD CPU and a custom designed AMD GPU based on their Navi technology, which will have hardware accelerated built-in ray tracing capability. Yes, Waifu Pennywise, PlayStation 5. The spinning disk hard drive will be replaced with an SSD. There are stories that you will be able to do things like install just certain segments of games on. Well, first you will have to install the game, or at least the core of the game, if not the art assets and so on, from the Blu-ray discs onto that SSD. That will be a requirement, and I'm assuming that's some sort of game control function. But according to what I've read, you will be able to install only certain aspects of the game. Say if you don't want to play multiplayer, you just want to play a game that has multiplayer, but you want to play the solo campaign, you can just install the campaign. You don't have to install all of the other stuff and eat up space on that SSD. All the articles call the SSD the ultra-fast or something like that SSD, but I've yet to see any article that says that it is an NVMe type SSD, which is the fastest type of connection you can have to a computer system for an SSD. They may just be using the term ultra fast because in comparison to a spinning disk hard drive, any SSD is ultra fast. Other changes are apparently some big changes to the controller, that it will replace the rumble effect with actual haptic feedback, particularly on the triggers. So for an example, in a game that has, this is one thing they put out there as an example, in a game that has you shooting a bow, the more you pull back the trigger, the more resistance the trigger will have, just like the more resistance, pulling on a bowstring will have. If you're driving a vehicle in a game and you're driving over rough terrain, you will get more of a resistance to the trigger pull to actually have turns. They also said that if you're driving on ice, you actually get a real glide effect with your controller. So a lot of things like that, haptic feedback in the controller, which sounds really cool. I'm assuming that it's going to be slightly more expensive than when the PS4 debuted, because that makes sense. How much more, I don't know. It would be great if they brought it in at pretty close to the original price point of the debut of the PS4. And I can't imagine it's going to be way off of that. They would turn off an awful lot of potential buyers if they jack the price way up. If they're custom designing this GPU, it's still not going to be any better than the current top-end AMD Ryzen-based, or Ryzen's are CPUs, any of the AMD GPUs that are out there right now. Like right now. So it's, as is always the case, consoles are going to lag slightly behind whatever the technology is for PCs at that same time. But that's cool. You get other benefits with the console. For those of you who play consoles, I don't. Because of that, I really suck at it. I'm a PC gamer, pretty much hardcore. But yeah, so holiday 2020, you'll be able to get your hands on a PlayStation 5. 5. There we go. Next up is, this looks like, I don't know exactly how to describe this, and the article I read doesn't know exactly how to describe this. So there's a series coming up. It is called Devs. It stars a number of people, including Nick Offerman. Um, it's coming to FX, and the teaser is like weird as heck. It's ostensibly the story of somebody who goes to gets involved in a mystery uh, uh, that is surrounding somebody who they were close to, who worked at a high tech company, a Google type company. Nick Offerman plays the CEO of this company, but the impression that they give is that this is very much like an afterlifey kind of company. The photo there, that's obviously Nick Offerman, and a lot of the people just sort of stand around with these rings over their heads a lot of times. Um, and for some reason, the article won't load for me. Yeah, this is also, by the way, I think a 2020 product. But the most important thing about this is that it's being done by Paige isn't responding. Yeah, I get that. It's being done by Alex Garland. And if you don't know who Alex Garland is, Alex Garland wrote the novel The Beach, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Wrote Danny Boyle's movie Sunshine, which is one of my absolute favorite science fiction movies. Wrote the screenplay to Dredd, Carl Urban's perfect take on Judge Dredd. Wrote and directed Ex Machina, and wrote for screen and directed Annihilation. This guy's track record is absolutely stellar. And if he's got this weird science fiction movie on his plate that stars that guy, Nick Offerman, I'm 100% involved, even though they give us almost nothing about the plot, the theme, and whatever about the movie or about the series. FX has done some really wonderful, crazy, creative things. Legion, just to hammer back the Marvel Comics thing, was so bizarre, so out there, and so good that I'm really looking forward to whatever that thing is going to be. If it's Alex Garland, writing it and executive producing it, I'm there. So I think it said it was a 2020, but I can't get this article to load for whatever reason. So I can't tell you for sure. Oh, here we go. So it's also, by the way, starring Sonoya Mitsuno from Crazy Rich Asians. And it is, and Allison Pill. I forgot about that. Come on, article. Tell me when it's happening. Yeah, spring of 2020. So nothing coming up this fall or winter. I'll wait. It looks cool to me. Moving on to our next topic. Speaking of TV series, speaking of Marvel, Hulu's Runaways has cast for season 3 Liz Hurley, shown right there, as the classic Marvel villain Morgan Le Fay. That is so cool. I mean, Liz Hurley is fantastic. She's a great comedic actress. I'm hoping she'll be an awesome villain. And from what I've seen in the trailer that they've put out, her take and the show's take on Morgan Le Fay is fairly accurate to the look and feel of her abilities and her personality from the comic books. And that's pretty cool. I'm not sure how much of her backstory they're going to put in there. She was once Doctor Doom's lover, and I'm guessing that can't really be part of it. Because Doctor Doom just came back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and who knows what they're going to be doing with that. I'm fairly sure they're not going to be dropping a mention of him in a Hulu series. As good as Runaways is, if you haven't watched it, it's really good. But one of the other great things that they showed in this teaser for the upcoming season is we finally got to look at what they've mentioned before, that there will in fact be a crossover between Cloak and Dagger and Runaways. And Cloak and Dagger is also an amazing series. You should check that out if you haven't. It's really good. On Freeform, but it also then runs on Hulu like the week after. But you get to see at the very end of this teaser that Cloak and Dagger are in fact in this upcoming season, and that's a great crossover. Two really good series, and I'm really looking forward to it. December 13th is when we get to see the next season on Hulu. Apparently, it runs on Sci-Fi in the UK. If you're watching us from the UK, and we do have people who watch us from all over the world, so that's cool. And thank you for watching. But yeah, so Liz Hurley. One other thing is they talk about. When I mentioned how they accurately get her powers. Her powers are kind of possession, among other things. And she does, in fact, possess at least one of, and they imply that it's a couple of at various times, of the Runaways. And the one that they show clearly is Nico, which makes sense because Nico uses magic. Nico has the staff. So it'll be interesting to see her turn the team on each other to some extent. Very excited about this. But moving on to our next topic, which I'm also very excited about. So at New York Comic Con, or during New York Comic Con, they dropped the latest trailer, and a full-length, very in-depth trailer for the upcoming CBS All Access series, Star Trek Picard. And that is William Riker. And yes, Data, Brent Spiner, is in it. Riker is in it. Troy is in it. The people that show up possibly just for some nostalgia, maybe in the first episode or the first couple episodes. Cooper, Graf, welcome to the show. It's just a fantastic litany of the Star Trek Next Generation cast. The introduction of Riker is hilarious. It's like a wonderful bit where it's exactly where you can picture William Riker being. It's very cool. Little disturbed by the makeup effects that they were using for Brent Spiner, but hopefully they will fix that in post, as they say. Or this was early footage and they'll redo it or something, but it didn't look quite right, particularly the hair. But it looks really amazing. You get a little bit more of a sense of what the story is about, and why Picard is doing what he's doing, which is getting back into traversing the universe. And it's wonderful. It's a great big wet kiss to Star Trek Next Generation fans. There's no question about that. And I count myself in that list, and so I'm definitely looking forward to it. I don't have a whole lot of wait. It's January 23rd is when we get to see this. And apparently the demand for this was so big that they moved the panel and the premiere of this trailer to Madison Square Garden, and they had about 5,000 people at that panel watching this trailer at New York Comic Con. So check it out if you're a Star Trek fan. Check out the trailer for sure, because it'll really give you some wonderful nostalgia feels right in the heart. And will build up more and more excitement for this coming series. And now we get to our last topic, and our last topic is So that is a picture of the actual moment, the stream that had Blitzchung, a Blizzard Hearthstone tournament player, banned for a year anyway from Hearthstone tournaments. All of his winnings up to this point rescinded, because he spoke out in support of the protests in Hong Kong. So Blizzard Entertainment, within a day, as far as I can tell, of this very popular Hong Kong-based streamer, Twitch streamer, and competitive Hearthstone tournament player, saying support for the protesters in Hong Kong, they immediately said he was violating the terms of service, and they banned him from tournament play for a year. So the thing is, he was, in fact, in violation of the terms of service, because the terms of service are the most egregiously broad and arcane things that you've ever heard anybody place as a requirement on somebody's participation. It's just ridiculous what they say. This is it. Anything that brings Blizzard into public disrepute, offends a portion or group of the public, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image. Luminous, welcome to the show. And yes, well, so China did confront the NBA. That's an additional story. It's not really that nerdy. It's just another example of a large corporate entity bowing to the Chinese government, essentially. So when I first heard this story, I kind of wondered, what was it? I mean, if he incited violence, if he actually said something about, attack the police or throw Molotov cocktails or something, yeah, I can see that's something you don't want to have represented by an official tournament player. This is what he said: "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age." That's it. That's what he said. No incitement to riot, no encouragement of violence. He's asking to liberate Hong Kong, and he's calling the movement the revolution of our age. And Blizzard went, nope, can't do that. I don't know who this, what portion or group of the public this offends, or how this brings Blizzard into public disrepute, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image, which is the terms of service, except with the Chinese government. The group that is being offended is the Chinese government. Nobody else is going to be offended by this guy saying something as simple as "liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age." So Blizzard caved to the thought, and I doubt very much that the Chinese government got in touch with them, caved to the thought that they would be offending the Chinese government, which might then ban participation in any tournaments, or more importantly, revenue coming from the viewing of tournament play in China. Because as Luminous pointed out, Alicia, you're wearing the same headphones right now as me? Yeah, well, I guess, yeah, because the guy that we had up on the screen, Logitech's, not that they sponsor us or anything, so I probably shouldn't just throw that out there, but anyway. So a member of the NBA tweeted support for the protests in Hong Kong, very quickly deleted it. The NBA went out of their way to apologize for it, and still the Chinese government has now completely stopped any broadcasts of NBA games on the official Chinese television, CCTV, which is really annoying because CCTV also means closed circuit television, so like security cameras. But anyway, so I can, I guess Blizzard had a reason to be concerned, because obviously the Chinese government really, really doesn't want anybody to in any way encourage democracy. Oh, and by the way, if Chinese government is now going to no longer support our channel, well, you never have, so who cares? I guess we might, who knows, maybe Google will cave to it and we will just get demonetized for this particular episode. Oh well. Luminous, Blizzard is not based in China, but they do a lot of business in China. Blizzard asks, or Luminous asks, is Blizzard based in China, or do they do a lot of business there? Um, Blizzard is based in California, or technically they're owned corporately. They're owned out of France, of all things. But or they were. Wow. Somebody correct me on that. Did Blizzard buy itself out of its corporate overlordship by a French media conglomerate a couple of years ago? I might not remember that correctly. Any Blizzard fans on the channel, correct me on that. But they do a ton of business. So streaming of tournament gaming was deeply entrenched in all over various Asian countries and Asian culture before it became a big thing here in the United States. But it did become a big thing, and Blizzard is one of the biggest with Overwatch tournaments and Hearthstone and all of these others. And to risk the huge market, even though we can't compare apples and oranges, I did actually just hear this stat earlier in a story about the NBA. The last NBA Finals had 600 plus million viewers in China. That is roughly 3 times, 2.5 times the total population of the United States. So yeah, there are huge, huge revenue opportunities for companies that do broadcast or show or stream the various things as entertainment to the Chinese audience. That's why the movie industry is making sure that it appeals to the Chinese audience as much as it can. The problem is the only way to get to the Chinese audience is through the Chinese government. And if the Chinese government is ticked off at you, like they are at the NBA right now, that's an amazingly large revenue hit. And Blizzard didn't want to do that. It's still a really crappy thing to do, to essentially say that your revenue source is way more important to you than the actual expression of a support for a pro-democracy movement. He didn't support the violence. He didn't say anything about inciting violence. He said, liberate Hong Kong. I'm with him on that, 100%. Oh no, that means I won't be able to play Hearthstone tournament. I've never played a Hearthstone game in my life, so okay, who cares? So that's kind of my could we please or could we not? Could we please not be complete corporate scumbags caving to authoritarian regimes because you're afraid of losing some money when somebody expresses support for people who are literally dying in the streets to try to get more democratic representation in their part of that country. Could we not do that? Luminous, Google has compromised its free speech in order to do business in China. That is absolutely 100% true. But that's in China. And he points out that if you do a search for Tiananmen Square, you'll get different results in China than you will in the United States. That's in the Chinese market. They're not allowing, so far, they're not allowing the Chinese government to dictate what can be shown to U.S. users of Google. By banning Blitzchung, Blizzard is allowing the Chinese government to dictate who anybody anywhere in the world can watch playing their game. And that's just not right. There's no other way to describe it. That's just not right. And Blizzard should reverse this decision as fast as they can. This is as bad in a completely different way as Disney caving to right-wing hatchet jobs and firing James Gunn. Eventually, Disney reversed its position because it was wrong. They knew it was wrong. It was a wrong thing to do. And this is the wrong thing to do, Blizzard, suspending Blitzchung for a year, essentially eliminating the poor guy's revenue source for one whole year. But anyway, that's me on a rant for the last 10 minutes or so about this. And I kind of hate ending the show on a note where I'm yelling at a cloud. Old man yells at cloud. But sometimes you got to just say what's really the case here. And the case is that this is a pretty crappy decision on the part of Blizzard. So, folks, thank you for joining. I want to shout outs to the winners of our cosplay and photography shootout panel at New York Comic Con. We pulled it off in 1 hour. I have no idea how we did it, but we pulled it off in 1 hour. We didn't go long. We had some amazing pictures. Those galleries will go up on the website, which some of you may have noticed is down right now. Database problems with our hosting company. They're working on it. Should be up no later than midday tomorrow, because that would be their 24-hour window. But anyway, yeah, so the galleries of the winners and all the contestants from that cosplay and photography shootout will be going up at some point, along with all of our other content from New York Comic Con. Check all that out. It was fantastic. Luminous, thank you. It was... I'd say this is a little bit... Luminous participated. And definitely presented one of the better images, one of the funnier images. It was hilarious. So look forward to those. Brady, we talked about Star Trek Picard quite a while ago, and the new trailer that dropped at New York Comic Con, and all of the Next Generation people that were in it. And that's what that image was that's in the teaser, which might be what you're thinking about. That was Picard and Riker, but in their first encounter since basically the end of the Next Generation series in the last movie. If you haven't seen the trailer, Brady, go check it out. It's really funny. That encounter is really funny. The rest of the trailer is pretty serious and very cool. Anyway, I was wrapping this up. So thank you all for joining us. If you're going to be at LeakyCon in Boston this weekend, come by, say hi. Not really sure where I'm going to be. Probably up in the mezzanine overlooking the lobby of the Westin, because that's a really cool place to get good photos. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Once again, Rodney Brown, Editor-in-Chief of Nerd Caliber, signing off. Peace out.